But now we've given them a way to take control of that last mile with the introduction of a new product we're excited to talk with you about today called the IXProbe. It's a purpose-built, small form factor inline probe for performance monitoring at the network edge. We've designed it to not only provide traffic and link information through SNMP and even more rich quality of service through synthetic monitoring capabilities that Nicholas will talk more about in a moment, but also for fast, simple deployment at scale. And some of the capabilities we'll talk about and I'll mention later are subtle, but important, like failing to wire in the event of power failure. This is actually really important when you have devices setting in line because of the environments they're deployed in. A funny but real example a customer we're working with kept having at a particular site was the network kept going down somewhat regularly at the same time of evening, roughly, and they couldn't figure out why it was happening. And it'd go down for a little while, and then it'd come back up. And after just a great deal of troubleshooting, and as you can imagine, expense, they found the issue was that the cleaning staff would come in, need the plug, use it for the vacuum or whatever, unplug the device, and then sometimes forget to plug it in or plug it back in when they're done. But in the intervening time, the network was down. So again, there's a number of subtle but important features that are needed and we've provided with IXProbe. I'll go into a little more detail of how IXProbe works in a few minutes, but this diagram should give you an idea, at least at a high level, of where it's deployed and what it looks like in the network. So here we have an example where on the right you have the customer's network at the top right there and the provider's network at the bottom right. Obviously, both are interested in the branch link status and performance of the last mile, which is represented by the triangle, or sorry, the square there with the question mark on the far left. And so in this case, we've depicted an example with a main link represented by carrier 1 and, say, a backup link like LTE represented by carrier 2. And what we've done is place the IXProbe, in this case on both links there, to give visibility into what's going on at the branch site, again represented by the square there on the far left. So we can put IXProbes there, and then we can also add additional endpoints and active capabilities there in the customer's, the enterprise's network, again represented by the top right, or the service provider's network represented at the bottom left. That could be additional IXProbes. It could be some of our, maybe a little bit more powerful edge network solutions like the E1S. But in any case, what that enables us to do is some additional test scenarios and monitoring capabilities represented by the synthetic traffic lines that you see there on the diagram. But I'll hand it off to Nicholas now to talk more about some of those monitoring and test capabilities that we have with Hawkeye, and then I'll go into a little bit more detail about how IXProbe works here in a few minutes. So, Nicholas?
Hey, thanks a lot, Craig. So I'm going to get into more details on what types of metrics we are collecting with IXProbe and why we think it's important. So first, let me say I've been taking care of the active monitoring product line for IXIA and IXProbe site for a long time, and really what we were missing with this was inline performance metrics. So I think it's really a great complement to our existing offering that we have with a product called Hawkeye. So what I'm going to do is to cover more into details what kind of metrics we can get for you with IXProbe. Okay, so this first thing that we call inline monitoring is actually very important, and that's one of the key value propositions that we have with IXProbe. So we call that the first line of defense because that's the first thing you want to know about what your customer is experimenting at the remote end. So we place this IXProbe, as Craig explained, to the remote sites, and they're in line, so they can see the traffic that users are consuming, like upstream, downstream traffic. And by seeing that, they're going to let you know if they see like no traffic at all, which means like the link might be down. So you're going to get notified of this up and down status. Not only that, it's going to tell you which level of traffic you're seeing, and it's going to have a breakdown per packet size, how the bandwidth is utilized, and what types of packets are going through the line. So it's very important to get this inline visibility. It gives you understanding of what you and the remote users are doing at the site, and it gets you a pulse. So we call that a pulse at all times. Like every second, we're going to collect this information if needed and give you some information. What's is this remote site looking like in terms of their utilization of the metrics. And of course, it comes with alerting, so either by triggering an SMP trap to your surveillance system or monitoring system, supervision system, but also if it can be integrated with our solutions or our own solution. So our own solution can actually collect these traps or information that something is going bad at the remote sites and notify you with emails or APIs or any of these good things to integrate with your OSS. So collecting these inline metrics, inline information, like how is the bandwidth utilized at the remote site? Is my leak up or down? Is one of the key value for IXProbe because it's plugged in line. Now what we wanted is to get more information from this device. So what we did is we integrated IXProbe into our Hawkeye solution. So Hawkeye is synthetic monitoring solution or active monitoring solution, we call it. So what it does is it emulates endpoints in the network that are going to generate traffic to understand the network performance. IXProbe is now one of these endpoints that you can use. So on IXProbe, we can leverage the inline metrics as well as synthetic monitoring. And I will cover in more details what we have as capabilities for synthetic monitoring with IXProbe. Now, the other interesting part is that Hawkeye is also an element manager for IXProbe. So if you have IXProbe deployed into your network, it's going to be able to drive and control the IXProbe themselves for synthetic monitoring, but also for these inline statistics that I just covered. And you can also configure the IXProbe remotely with Hawkeye, so it has a single point of management for all the functionalities of IXProbe. Now, how do I deploy Hawkeye? So you would deploy the server side, either on-prem or in the cloud. So we have different versions for the server, and it's coming as a NEUE, or a virtual machine. So you deploy that, and then you're going to place your endpoints into the different locations in your network. And typically, you would place them one at the remote sites, where your end users are actually sitting and consuming the network services. So that would typically be now IXProbe. And some others, maybe in the locations where they are looking for applications. So it could be in the cloud, it could be in your data center. It can be, in any place where you have like point of service for your network services. Or it can be in a gateway, like your gateway to the internet, for example. And so we have different ways you can dispatch these endpoints. So we have hardware. So IXProbe is one. We have all the solutions, like we have small Wi-Fi capable devices. We have large up to 10 gig types of network devices or appliances that can generate 10 gig traffic to test very large circuits. And we also have virtual solutions that you can place into the cloud as containers or VM. You can also place them into other network equipment, like we just announced that we could place our endpoints into Cisco switches as an example, but there are plenty of other devices where we can place our software. And we also have a binary endpoint, so it's more like small binaries or executables that you can install into PCs, smartphones, devices. So these are more lightweight and they have fewer capabilities, but they are very easy to deploy in any locations. So with a mix of all of these, you can easily reach out to many different locations with Hawkeye. Okay, so what value do we get from these endpoints? So in this slide, I just illustrate an example where we have an IXProbe lying at the end user site. So it's a remote site for enterprise, for example. And other endpoints sitting into the network. So there can be virtual endpoints into data center or cloud. They can be or 10 gig endpoints serving as a hub site, for example. So you see on the left-hand side the small white device is the IXProbe, and it's going to actually generate traffic to the other guys into the network. And you see the line illustrating traffic, and what kind of traffic are we going to inject? So we can inject like what we call a transport performance metrics. Or packets. So we're going to inject packets, and we're going to measure packet loss, jitter, latency between these locations. So that gives you an instant information about the sanity of your network. your network performance from an end-to-end. So if we do that in a continuous manner, you get continuous information like how is my network behaving. Or maybe you just want to monitor that when customers are complaining so that you're kind of getting this information ad hoc. You can keep history as well, so there are different ways you can instrument that. The other thing that we can do is quite important. This is what we call speed test. And speed test is kind of measuring the bandwidth available between these locations. So more often than not, like people are complaining like, hey, my network is being slow. Is it because of the access? Is it because of the application? Is it because of something else? So we're going to help understanding like what is the size of your pipe. Not only that, we're going to be able to tell you like, hey, if you mark your traffic with different class of services, like how much do you get prioritized over traffic between the class of services? So what is going to be your repartition in the class of services? Is it well implemented from an end-to-end perspective? So it's going to help you give that visibility, like how is my remote site being implemented? And again, that can be run on a troubleshooting manner or on a recurrent fashion, like every day during the night, you can run this test to validate the sanity of your network. And we're also providing more like application level tests. So it can be voice over IP, it can be unified communication. So we are Office 365 type of traffic or Skype for Business. We are implementing Teams as well in the next version. So we can emulate all sorts of video, voice traffic that you typically see in these networks. We can also emulate the video platforms like Netflix, YouTube, and so on. So we can give you a lot of different application level visibility, like how is it performing from an end-to-end. And again, that can be used for continuous monitoring, ad hoc troubleshooting, or first, when you first deploy a circuit or a link for your end user, you want to verify that it's working. So another way to use IXProbe or other endpoints is what we call one-arm test, so real service test that we have outlined in this slide. The difference is that you only need one endpoint, so for example, the IXProbe into the network to understand how they can reach out to remote destinations. Typical example that I like to give is if you want to know your connectivity to the cloud, like a cloud service like Office 365, then we can run a battery of tests going to these services and see how long it takes to download pages, how long it takes to connect, how long it takes to access to the different servers hosting Office 365, SharePoint, and others, and give you an insight of your connectivity to this service. So it's good to access the cloud. It's also good to access remote equipments or servers. So you have web servers. We can give you web servers, web server and user experience. And if you have routers interfaces like specific gateways or points in the network that you want to qualify, we can run different types of packets, ICMP like ping, UDP, TCP to understand how the network is behaving. And last but not least, we do have a path discovery, which is giving you a full map of the network. So it's doing hop by hop discovery and gives you a lot of insight of what's going on when you want to reach out to far destination. So I covered in details what types of metrics we can actually collect for both inline and synthetic monitoring, and you see that it's a very rich set of metrics that we can get from IXProbe, and combining that with all the types of endpoints that we can deploy into the network. That's a lot of information that can reach out to our database. And all this information that we collect is only as good as our analytic engine is going to make sense out of that. So we put a lot of effort into Hawkeye, into getting the value from the data that we collect. And so to do that, we have all sorts of reports and dashboards that are already available or are available for inline metrics now. So what we recently added is some machine learning intelligence into the system so that we can actually automatically detect baselines. So what is the basic functionality of your network, or from what we collect, what we learn automatically, what is good or bad for your network. And so we can automatically detect the problems and be a lot more accurate at telling you like, hey, you have a problem at this right spot, at this remote site, and this is for your voice over IP, or this is for your network packet loss. And you should focus on that because this is really an issue. This has been drifting from the baseline that we have detected over the time, and so be a lot smarter into looking at the issues. So that's it's a new module that we have added recently that is available for synthetic monitoring and will be soon available for inline data collection as well. So it will make this analytic exercise a lot more efficient for automatically learning and telling you what is going on into your network in a very sharp fashion. Now, with that, I'm going to hand it over back to Craig, that is going to cover in more details some IXProbe installation specifics. So back to you, Craig.
Okay, thanks, Nicholas. As I mentioned earlier, IXProbe was purpose-built with scalability and installation by non-technical personnel in mind. So let me just quickly go into a bit more detail about how it works. There's really three main steps we're going to cover. Step one, as we mentioned earlier, we're talking about thousands of sites. So we're making it easy for customers to receive IXProbes, integrate a given probe with the right account information or location, indoor locations, and their OSS and various account information, and deploy it to those sites. And then step two is install with non-technical people on site and then start receiving the performance information. As you can see in the diagram on the right, installation is easy. One Ethernet plug from, in this case, a cable modem to the IXProbe, and then another from the IXProbe to the customer's router, and of course a power plug in the back. Now, one thing worth noting that we're actually applied for a patent round is how we handle IP addressing. As I alluded to earlier, when the MNSPs don't own the last mile, they also cannot get or have to pay additional money for a unique IP address for the monitoring device, which obviously adds up over thousands of units. So what we've done is create an IP adoption mode in which the IXProbe actually adopts the address of the customer's router so that it's really just an invisible bump on the wire that simply provides performance information without blocking or impeding any traffic. This thought process also led to one of the security features, which is in the trusted IP list. Any management server IP system is added to the IXProbe's trusted IP list and setup. And unless traffic is from a source on that IP list, the traffic is just passed through at line rate up to a gig. Once you have it installed, step three is all about monitoring and managing the IXProbe visibility points. You can use APIs and SNMP traps to directly send to whatever management or monitoring tools you might be using, but we also provide Hawkeye that Nicholas described earlier to give customers an easy way to manage, update, and configure thousands of units, as well as collect the SNMP synthetic monitoring data all in one place or one tool for one-stop shopping, if you will. And finally, I know I said 3 steps, but really the fourth step shown here is the value in the first 3 steps. I won't go through each of the use cases shown here, but the payoff is using IXProbe and Hawkeye capabilities Nicholas and I discussed to verify your SLAs and build in service assurance to your offerings, and along a variety of value-added activities ranging from service activation and turn-up to continuous experience, customer experience monitoring, and proactively identifying issues before your customers do. So with that, I'll turn it over to Mike to wrap this up, and of course, here in a few minutes, we'll take questions.
All right, thank you, Craig. He's awesome, isn't he? Anyways, I'm going to wrap things up real fast with a couple key takeaways, and then we'll do some Q&A. So first off, the times, they are a-changin'. Now, Bob Dylan may have said that over 50 years ago, but it's as true today as it was then. Customer experience is a primary differentiator, and SLAs are evolving to better align with that priority. This means big opportunities for service providers, who will have a huge leg up over the competition if they can adapt to this new paradigm. However, that all hinges upon being able to solve that last mile visibility challenge, which is a tough nut to crack. And how can you solve that challenge? Well, we're not haughty enough to say that IXProbe is the only way to do it, but we are confident enough to say that it's a simple, elegant solution that's tailor-made to solve this problem. enabling service providers and enterprises alike to take control of quality of service while lowering their operating costs at the same time. But what does that really mean? Well, it means that as a service provider, you can build in new revenue opportunities by locking in service assurance and offering verified SLAs to all of your clients, regardless of whether they're in your service area or not. It means that whether you supply last mile connectivity or rely on it, you can reduce operating expenses by dispatching fewer truck rolls and troubleshooting faster when something goes wrong. And finally, you can do all of this easily. With scalable provisioning, deployment, and installation, this all-in-one solution enables you to adopt a unified monitoring architecture without employing complex, costly, or fragile workarounds and integrations.